Welcome to Moonlit Ink BL, a BL story written under moonlight. Let's begin. Hyeon Park learned how to be quiet before he learned how to be brave. Quiet was safety. Quiet was order. Quiet was the way he survived without drawing attention to himself. Growing up in Korea, Jae learned early that love often came with expectations attached. His parents never shouted, never demanded loudly, but their expectations lived in the pauses between words. Study well, behave well, appear proper, appear normal. So Jae learned how to appear. By the time he was old enough to date, he dated women. Not because his heart leaned that way, but because it was easier. Because it was expected. Because it allowed him to keep certain questions unanswered. His girlfriend, now his ex, had once seemed kind. At the beginning, she liked how attentive he was, how he listened without interrupting, how he rarely disagreed. But attentiveness slowly became silence. "You never argue," she would say. "Do you even have opinions?" "Sometimes I feel like I'm dating a wall." Jae tried to change. He spoke more, smiled more, gave more. It was never enough. The night they broke up, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no tears, just exhaustion. "You're not really here," she said, arms crossed. "I don't think you ever were." Jae didn't argue. For once, he didn't apologize either. They ended things quietly, like everything else in Jae's life. And yet, when he stepped outside afterward, the air felt lighter. His chest still ached, but the ache felt like healing rather than harm. 2 weeks later, the acceptance email arrived. Kingsbridge University, United Kingdom, exchange program. 1 semester. Jae stared at the screen for a long time. He wasn't running away. He had already let go. The night before his flight, his parents reminded him to focus on his studies, to behave well, to represent the family properly. Jae listened, nodded, promised. Inside, he held onto a smaller promise meant only for himself. "I will stop pretending." The plane ride to the UK was long and quiet. Jae watched the clouds drift beneath him, endless and soft, and allowed himself to imagine a version of life where he didn't have to fold himself smaller. Kingsbridge University looked like something taken straight from a novel. Stone buildings worn smooth by centuries. Ivy climbing walls as if it belonged there. The air smelled like rain, old books, and something gently unfamiliar. Jae liked it immediately. He arrived with 2 suitcases, neatly packed, and a heart cautiously open. His dorm assignment was simple. Room 312. Jae stood outside the door for a moment, fingers resting on the handle. New country, new beginning, new space where no one knew him. He opened it. "Mate, you're blocking the sunlight." Jae blinked. Inside the room, a guy sat perched on the windowsill, golden afternoon light wrapping around him like a spotlight. He had sandy blonde hair, a relaxed posture, and a grin that looked far too confident for someone Jae had just met. Jae stepped inside. "Sorry." The guy hopped down easily and extended a hand. "Arthur Taylor," he said cheerfully. "Looks like we're roommates." Jae hesitated before shaking it. Arthur's grip was warm and steady. Hyeon Park." Arthur tilted his head slightly. "That's a really nice name." Jae felt heat rise to his ears. He nodded, unsure how to respond. From that moment on, Arthur filled the room with sound. He talked while Jae unpacked his clothes with precise care. He talked while Jae lined his books neatly along the shelf. He talked about Kingsbridge nightlife, about pubs and clubs, and how the city never truly slept if you knew where to look. Jae listened. Arthur didn't seem bothered by Jae's short answers. If anything, he looked entertained by them, like Jae's quiet was something interesting rather than inconvenient. That first night, long after the lights were turned off, Jae lay awake listening to Arthur's breathing across the room. Steady, calm. Jae wondered if sharing space would feel overwhelming. Didn't. Jae fell into his routine quickly. Morning lectures, always early. Afternoons in the library, surrounded by silence and paper. Evenings at the gym, grounding himself through movement. Nights with his books, highlighter gliding across text. The predictability soothed him. Arthur noticed within 3 weeks. "You know," Arthur said one evening, watching Jay pack his gym bag. "You're terrifyingly consistent." Jay glanced up. "Is that bad?" Arthur laughed. "No. Kind of impressive, actually. I don't think I've ever committed to anything this hard." Jay allowed himself a small smile. Arthur teased him often about how quiet he was, how neat his notes looked, how he always chose studying over parties. "Come on," Arthur would say, pulling on his jacket. "Just one night. Let me show you the city properly." "No," Jay replied gently each time. Arthur should have lost interest. Instead, he found himself watching Jay more closely. Jay wasn't cold. He wasn't distant. He was attentive in a way that felt rare. When Arthur spoke, Jay listened fully. When Arthur laughed too loudly at his own jokes, Jay's lips would twitch like he was holding one back. Arthur noticed how strong Jay was, not just physically, though the gym had clearly shaped him, but emotionally. Jay carried himself with quiet discipline, with a gentleness that made Arthur feel unexpectedly safe. Arthur was gay, openly, unapologetically. Jay never reacted when Arthur mentioned exes or made passing comments about attractive men. Arthur assumed Jay was straight, so he admired him quietly. The night everything changed, it was raining. Cold rain. The kind that soaked through clothes and mood alike. Arthur was walking back to the dorm, hands in his pockets, thinking stupidly about whether it would be ridiculous to ask Jay out anyway. He never saw them coming. Voices, shoves, pain, fists connected, boots struck ribs, words, sharp, hateful words, cut deeper than the blows. When Arthur finally made it back to room 312, he was shaking. Jay looked up from his desk instantly. "Arthur." Jay was beside him in seconds, guiding him gently to the bed. "Sit," Jay said softly. Arthur obeyed. Jay cleaned his wounds carefully, hands steady, voice calm. He asked quiet questions. "Does this hurt? Tell me if it does." When Jay dabbed at Arthur's split lip, something broke. Arthur cried. "It wasn't just the pain," he whispered. "It was the way they looked at me, like I was wrong." Jay stopped. Then he pulled Arthur into his arms. Arthur cried openly against Jay's chest, shaking. Jay held him firmly, one hand resting protectively at the back of his head. Jay said nothing. He didn't need to. Later, when Arthur finally slept, Jay lay awake staring at the ceiling. He's always so bright, Jay thought. So open. And yet, he hurts. Something warm settled in Jay's chest. Not fear, not confusion, but recognition. The days after were quieter. Jay walked Arthur to class, sat beside him at meals, stayed close without being asked. Arthur noticed. He didn't tease. He didn't push. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the window, Jay spoke. "I'm not straight." Arthur turned slowly. "What?" Jay smiled faintly. "I never was. I just dated women because it was easier." Arthur stared at him, then laughed softly, disbelief and relief tangled together. "I liked you from the first day," Arthur admitted. "I just thought it was pointless." Jay chuckled quietly. "I know." Arthur hugged him suddenly, emotion spilling over. Jay returned it without hesitation. "I want to date you," Arthur said softly. Jay kissed his forehead. "I'd like that." And in that quiet room, Jay realized something important. He hadn't come to the UK to escape a relationship. He had come because he was finally ready to be honest. And in Arthur, loud, warm, unapologetically himself, Jay found love that didn't demand he disappear. Love that stayed. Thank you for listening Under the Same Moon. I'll be here when you're ready for the next one.